Good morning. Today on Spotlight, a topic we really don't see and all too often take for granted until something goes wrong. Our aging infrastructure in Michigan, from safe drinking water to stormwater runoff, climate change, green sustainability, and yes, affordability. Oakland County Water Resource Commissioner Jim Nash will join us to discuss these important quality of life issues. And later on our Sunday program, we'll remember Detroit journalist and Spotlight friend Hugh McDermott. It's Sunday, October the 20th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Mr. Commissioner, welcome to Spotlight.
Thanks for having me.
I'm curious, when you're out and about at the various public meetings and you tell people that you are the Water Resource Commissioner for Oakland County, what's the most common question you get?
What's that?
People
have heard of drain commissioners. That's something that's been in Michigan for well over 100 years. But we renamed as the Water Resource Commissioner because we do way more than just drains.
Okay. And once you get past the title, what do they want to know from you?
Well, that we operate and maintain 17 communities in Oakland County for their water and sewer services. We operate drain and sewer systems that serve about 800,000 people in Oakland County. We do lake level, lake improvement boards. We do erosion control. We have a wide range of things we do. Environmental protection is a major part of what we do also.
And most of what you're dealing with is stuff we can't see or don't take the opportunity and time to see, or stuff that we take for granted.
Oh, absolutely. Most of our stuff is underground. People have no idea. We have something called the George W. Kuhn Retention Basin in the southeast corner of the county that has 125 million gallons of water sewage storage underneath the ground that nobody knows is there. We have golf courses on top of it, a water park, all that stuff's on top of it, and nobody knows it's there.
Right. Is there a common complaint that you get from people?
Well, really, we don't get that many complaints. When there's an issue, when there's a sewer backup, that's one of our biggest things. That's often caused by fats, oils, and grease that people put down their sinks or rags they flush in their toilets that gather in pipes and block them, and then we have sewer backups, and nobody wants that in their house. So the more we can educate people about how to prevent those things, the better off we are.
Infrastructure has really come into the limelight as of recently, particularly here in Michigan because of the drinking water, the Flint, Michigan situation. Now we're doing more recent reports on Highland Park not too long ago, Birmingham, Michigan. So obviously we're dealing with old infrastructure. Let's take the safe drinking water first. How concerned should Michiganders be about what they're getting out of their faucets?
Almost all the issues we have around lead are within the homeowner's property. Either the line coming off the main that goes into the house, that's called the lead, or the actual plumbing inside the house that can have lead in the solder, it can have lead in some of the faucets and things like that. So the water that comes from the Great Lakes Water Authority is some of the purest in the country. It's when it leaves that water main and comes into your house, that's where we can have some problems. So mostly all our systems have something called corrosion control, which is a chemical, orthophosphate. It's in all our bodies. It's put in the water and then it lines the insides of pipes so the water doesn't actually touch the pipes that have lead in them. That's our biggest form of protection. If there's any concern, if your home was built before 1950, they might have lead lines in the yard. If your home was built before 1985, you might have lead solder in your pipes inside your home. So those kind of things are something that people should be aware of. We do testing on all the systems that we operate and maintain, but there's only like 30 samples in each city. So if somebody has concern about their own home's infrastructure, you can go to the health department and get a sample bottle for lead and test it in your house. You send it away, they send you a report a couple of weeks later, tell you what the conditions of your pipes are in. So that's something I would recommend. If anybody has any concern about lead, the most important thing you can do is just run your water for a minute, especially if if you haven't used your water in 6 or 8 hours, like overnight. First thing in the morning, you just run your tap until the water gets a little colder. That means it's coming out of the main. So as long as it's coming out of the main, you're not going to have a problem with lead. So it's just that first flush in the morning, you really got to make sure that you flush that out of your system before you start drinking the water.
Your domain is Oakland County. That's what you get to worry about the most in terms of what the taxpayers want to know. In terms of infrastructure and replacement of infrastructure, What kind of money are we talking about to bring Oakland County up to snuff?
Well, a lot of our infrastructure, our water infrastructure is newer. The water service that have come to our communities in Oakland County tends to be more 40 or 50 years old, so those pipes aren't in as bad condition. The sewer pipes and the stormwater pipes that have been in these underground for anywhere up to 100 years, like well over half of the pipes in Pontiac up in Oakland County are over 70 years old. And the life expectancy on those pipes when they were put in the ground was about 50 years old. So we're right now in the process of replacing a huge chunk of the underground infrastructure in Pontiac, and that's going to be an ongoing program that we'll be doing for some years to come.
Is that when I know your assistant, Julia Ruffin, sent me a picture of wood piping that's up under. Is that some of the old stuff that's
not
up
in
under?
Oakland County so much. We find that still in Wayne County and in Detroit, because that was the original plumbing that was done in this whole region. So those date back to the 1800s. And there are still pipes in Pontiac, in Detroit, that are made of wood, of logs that are just hollowed out in the middle. So the log is that thick, and there's a small pipe in the middle that water comes through. And those pipes can last for generations because, again, the wood basically becomes rock hard over time. And so we're still discovering those. And it's the connections between pipes that leak and those kind of things. And so there's fewer of them every year, but there's still an issue. And it just shows you how old some of this infrastructure is.
Can we afford to replace the infrastructure that needs to be replaced? Because that means taxes, and people never want to hear
our
about
systems,
taxes.
all our systems don't really operate on taxes. We operate on fees. So we charge people for the water they use, which is a fee. That's the state, it treats them very differently than taxes. So really, when we're doing this, everything that is done within the system of, say, a city, all the ratepayers in that city have to pay those. So over time, affordability is a very large issue. In Detroit, it's a very big issue, and in Pontiac, some of our lower income communities, and even in some of our higher income communities, there's people in there, seniors on fixed incomes, young families that are just coming up that are having a hard time. So even in our affluent communities, we have a significant number of folks that are going to have a hard time keeping up with these payments. So that's a lot of what we need to do. We need state help in doing, and there's been talk about it over the years, but it's been very rare that we've seen the funding. We saw something a few years ago called the SAW program, which allows us to do asset management on our underground infrastructure and funding for that. And that's been extremely helpful. So what we're doing is we're designing right now our long-term asset management plans for all these facilities. So all these are underground. So we have to send cameras underground to check the condition of the pipes. Then we decide what are the pipes that are in the most need of work the first. So we plan that out going ahead. So we take care of the pipes that are in the worst shape first and then work towards the newer pipes.
All right, we need to take a little break. We'll hurry right back. We'll talk about things like green sustainability and all sorts of other issues that you have to deal with as the Commissioner of the Water Resource for Oakland County. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Issues like climate change, stormwater, and what you're doing in terms of landscaping to make sure that we're capturing some of that water and using it in a positive way. Green sustainability. I mean, these are all phrases that we hear a lot about now.
Sure. Stormwater is the last of the pollution sources that have really not been fully tackled yet. We had the Clean Water Act back in the 70s, and that dealt with what's called point source pollution, which is chemical plants, manufacturing plants that put out sewage that has chemicals in it, that has bad things in it, and wastewater treatment plants. All that is heavily regulated now. Stormwater is called non-point source pollution because it just comes from the sky, and wherever it lands, it's going to get into your nearby lakes, rivers, and streams. So there's two ways. There's a separated system where the stormwater just goes into a stormwater system and then is immediately released to the nearest local body of water untreated. And then there's something called combined systems. Again, the George W. Kuhn I mentioned before holds 125 million gallons of water. That's stormwater mixed with sewage, so that's combined. That is treated. We have a treatment plant on site that treats that with chlorine, basically, and the water that comes out of that, if the storm's too big to hold in the system, is treated water. So it's actually cleaner than the water that's already in the environment that it's entering. So what we're trying to do is show that We've been using gray infrastructure for many, many years, which is these underground pipes, these storage tanks underground, all the big pumps that move things around. That's very expensive. It's expensive to put in the ground, it's expensive to operate and maintain. We're talking about green infrastructure. What that's meant to do is mimic how natural land absorbs rainwater, because if rainwater falls in a forest, almost none of it runs off. It's all absorbed by the ground or by the leaves of the trees.
So is that why we're seeing a lot of these major roads with the landscaping in the middle?
Exactly, because that's what's going to be, well...
So it's just not purely cosmetic?
No, currently it is, because you see these humps between roads.
Right.
Well, all that does is mean the water that lands on that runs off, hits the roads, and then goes into storm sewers anyway. We're talking about bioswales. Instead of a hump, it's underneath. So the water that comes in there gathers there instead of going into our storm drains, and only enters the storm drains if there's enough rain that means it's more than that can hold. So what that does is if the more we can prevent from getting into the storm drains entirely, the less pollution will end up in our lakes, rivers, and streams, because that carries that pollution from our roofs, from our roads, oil, brake dust, all those things come off and go right into our lakes, rivers, and streams. So if we can stop that from happening through green infrastructure, mimicking how the earth naturally absorbs rainwater, that's going to be much cheaper to install, it'll be much cheaper to maintain over time, and we'll have less of those flooding events because we will stop it from getting in the system in the first place.
You're an expert in your area. Well, we constantly hear this debate about climate change. Is climate change real from your perspective?
Yes, it is definitely real. There's a collaborative group of all the universities in Michigan that have been studying this for some years, and they put out reports all the time around this stuff, and it shows that just in the last 20 years, we've seen significant increase of large rain events in southeast Michigan, just in here. And that's how we're going to be affected by climate change. Heat will be a problem over the year, and we'll have longer growing seasons and shorter winters. But also we'll be seeing more rain in this area, because rain will be coming across the country as the atmosphere gets warmer. It can hold more water moisture. When it reaches the Great Lakes, that means you're reaching cooler air. So when that warm air hits the cool air, that's when you have rainstorms. That's why we had big, giant rainstorms that are very, very hard and fast, because it's carrying more water than it used to carry. So now when it gets released, it's releasing it much stronger storms. So that's our concern, is we have to start preparing for those storms without spending literally billions of dollars of ratepayers' money in building underground infrastructure. We want to try to have them help us build the green infrastructure that prevents it from getting in there until they have a much higher storm.
Hopefully I'm calling it the right thing. The Clinton River Water Resource Recovery Plant?
Recovery facility. This is, it used to be called the Pontiac Wastewater Treatment Plant.
Okay. This is the only one in Michigan of this type?
What we're doing is we're doing a project on that plant that is the first in Michigan and the fourth in the country, which will help break down these biosolids. That's all the solids that come through in sewage. We shift off the water and we dry up a lot of these solids to a certain extent. We treat the water and release that, but the solids right now are being landfilled. So just that one facility is spending about $1.6 million a year just landfilling the solids that come out of that sewage. This new process that we're putting in at the plant costs about $32 million. It'll pay itself off in the first 5 or 6 years. We'll take a lot of those solids and produce, out of those solids, we'll produce methane, which is natural gas that we can sell on the market. We'll be producing a Class A fertilizer that's called Milorganite, which is actually out there in the market now, that will be perfectly safe to use in your lawn and gardens, and we'll be able to give it to the communities, that anybody from the communities that want some, we'll be able to give it to them. So there's a lot of beneficial things we'll be pulling out of that water, and we'll be saving a ton of money because we'll be able to sell that stuff on the market.
All right, we need to slip another break in here. We come back, I want to talk about the labor shortage, careers, diversity, and how that may all play into what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. We'll be right back. Stay with us. WRAP. That ties into what you talked about earlier, affordability. What is that? What does that stand for?
It's the Water Residential Assistance Program. What it is for folks who are at 150% or below of the poverty level, we have a program that helps them pay their water bills. If they've got an arrearage, it means if they owe money that they haven't been able to pay, it'll slowly pay that off. It gives them a $25 a month subsidy towards their water bill. And it also has the ability to, if they use too much water, they can get some free plumbing done in their homes to correct for that. So it's a really good program.
I
Unfortunately, we
imagine
haven't.
it's really popular with
Oh,
seniors.
it's anybody who has low income, who has a hard time paying their water bill. It's been very, very helpful. We haven't been able to spend all the money, so we're doing as much as we can to educate the folks that this is a resource that's available to them, that can help them pay their water bills.
So if people think they're eligible, they should get in touch with your office?
They can get in touch with my office if they're getting a bill that says their shut off is coming. We send them information about the program with it. So if there's any kind of issue with paying your bill, you'll automatically get that. But if you're having an issue and you just worry about it, give us a call. We can try to set you up on that.
You've talked a lot about building and creating things for the future, making sure that you're in sync with all of that. That probably speaks to jobs of the future.
Absolutely.
And
our industry is always looking for folks. You hear about it often now more than you used to, that the trades, we're having issues with the trades because
shortage.
The average person in the trades, plumbing, electricians, things like that, are in their 50s now, and we need young blood to come in here. So we're really reaching out as much as we can to get kids to come get training in the trades. You can get
and
paid,
those are good paying jobs.
and you get paid while you're training. Instead of paying tuition at a college, you can get paid while you're learning your trade. And then once you can start right after you learn your trade, you can make 50, 60, 70 grand a year just out of the gate. So there's good income for it, and we need them terribly. So we really want people to encourage them to get the training they need, to come talk to us, and we can get them the training once they work for us.
They get these at some of the vocational schools, maybe some of the community colleges?
We're working with the community colleges. We're working with the independent school district in Oakland County because they do a lot with high schools, and when they're getting out of high school, they could start these programs right out of high school, get paid to learn what you need to do, and also once you start, you're going to be starting out on a good, decent income.
This coming Wednesday, you have something called Imagine a Day Without Water on the 23rd of this month.
This is a national kind of just an educational push that's been going on for some years now, just to show people how much we depend on water. Even making a pair of shoes takes about 23 gallons of water to do that.
Are you kidding?
Just in the process of doing that, in all the things that are used towards that. There was a study a few years ago in Michigan that a huge number of jobs, I think they said like 1 in 5 jobs in Michigan is related to water somehow, whether it's tourism or dealing with water issues or working for the water departments. We do a ton of stuff around water. This is the water state. This is the Great Lakes state. So we are very focused on water here.
Yeah, and I've always heard the expression that it's our most valuable asset for the Great Lakes region, and we better protect it.
That's right. That's right. This is we're responsible for protecting 20% of the world's fresh water, and our grandkids are going to hate us if we don't do it right. And I say the generations coming are going to look at our generation and say, did we do the right thing or did we let things go? And I want to be part of that answer.
All right. Commissioner Jim Nash, thanks so much for coming in,
Absolutely.
updating us with all this information. We'd love to be able to get you back and give us some updates from time to time.
I would love to do that.
All right. And when we come back, we'll remember political giant in this region, Hugh McDermott. Worked many, many years for the Detroit Free Press, covered politicians. We'll remember him in his days on Spotlight. We'll be right back. And finally today, our condolences to the family and friends of longtime Detroit Free Press political writer and columnist, Hugh McDermott. Hugh passed away recently after medical complications from Alzheimer's disease. Hugh was 84. The Princeton University grad will be remembered for his superb reporting career, his tough questions to elected leaders, and as a champion for our environment. During his career, he appeared many times on Spotlight, including this July 1993 program when he helped to question Democratic candidate for Michigan governor, Representative Lynn John Doe.
I announced this morning in East Lansing my candidacy for governor of Michigan.
You say you have to get the message out, but a lot of people say money comes first in big-time politics. And you don't have exactly an entree to the fat cats, I don't think.
I think that's probably correct that I don't. The thing I need both to raise money and to win an election is widespread support. What I'm going to do is put out the 800 number, ask for those small contributions, go to wherever there's
Unlike Ross Perot, you won't tell us on the air what that number is, correct?
It's 1-800-494.
Did you do that to me,
LY.
McDermott?
I'm sorry. What about special interests?
Did you get it?
What about special interests? Are you gonna flush them and say no to special interest money in this campaign?
No. If you're saying, am I going to say there are people I'll pick and choose who supports me, that kind of thing, I don't think I need to worry about that. I've not had a history of having been bankrolled by special interests.
Representative John Dahl, Jim mentioned the other candidates, Debbie Stabenow, Howard Wolpe, also would appear, both of whom are your good friends, that also longtime friends and sometime constituents, maybe not constituents, but another who might get in is Larry Owen, who used to be the mayor of East Lansing when you lived there.
Yes.
Presumably, you know them all. So what do you say to people who come up to you and say, why should I vote for you instead of one of these people? What's your succinct answer?
My succinct answer is, let me tell you why you should vote for me.
Instead of them, though.
Well, if you vote for me, you can't vote for them.
Yeah.
And I'm
why
going
you?
Why me? I would argue, and my succinct response is, I've got a record that indicates I'm one who can accomplish the task of bringing competing ideas and claims together, job development
But won't they say the same things about themselves?
Then people are going to have to make that judgment.
There's an enormous amount of cynicism and disillusionment with government now out there, and yet you are not the least reluctant to say you are a governmental activist. You believe in an activist government. Won't people be cynical about you then and say, hey, the last thing we need is more active or more government, and sort of dismiss you when that comes out?
Well, it seems to me that there has been a practice of people asking for votes from constituents, running for office, saying, elect me, trust me, I oppose government. I'm an enemy of government, elect me. Now,
and you're not reluctant either to say that you think that government should pay for the services it provides,
well, exactly.
and that government should provide a fair amount of services, regulatory and otherwise, and we ought to pay for them, which translates into taxes, and you'll get...
Well, if we're going to argue that we're going to educate kids and not pay for it, if somebody's going to tell you you can do that without paying for it, then that person should be either laughed out of office or run out of office.
But they don't laugh them or run them out of office. They tend to believe in the superficial world of political campaigning.
Who believes that, Hugh?
People continually put people back in office who make those claims.
Who believes
no new taxes.
But who believes you can have something for nothing? Who believes?
I don't think there's any argument.
Hugh McDermott. He'll long be remembered. I'm Chuck Stokes. Have a good week.